Hello everybody, I'm Richard Gon of Work to Live podcast version. And recently, Russo-Ukrainian War has proceeded, and so I'm recording, well, I'm creating this episode on May in 2022, so which means maybe, so the sense is not the sense anyway, so thinking about the not chronological order, but actually, so as time, anyway, so what I'd like to tell you is that so some months have passed, not a few months have passed since the beginning of that war, but actually, so maybe so it has maybe not it has 3 months have almost 3 months have passed, almost 3 months have passed maybe, so maybe 2 months have passed since the beginning of that war, and that Russo-Ukrainian war began in the late of February in 2022. So after the beginning of that war, so some months have passed, and maybe that war might be that Slavic war might be prolonged because to start with, at first, when the war has just begun, when the war had just begun, so Russia was sanctioned by many countries, but actually, but Russia strove to fight against Ukraine, and of course, so Ukrainian soldiers got really advanced weapons given by Western developed European countries and the United States of America. So, but actually, thinking about comparing the populations between Ukraine and Russia, maybe it's naturally thinking, Ukrainian soldiers or Ukrainian forces really strong, which is possible, which is how you can think, or you can think, or you can understand. Anyway, so so at first Russia was, so how weak Russian soldiers are, or how weak Russian force was, which was the first impression of the broadcast, was the news, or impression, how should I say, anyway, so at first broadcast or flagships, or the news said Russian force or Russian soldiers were really weak, but actually, so now that, in this present time, maybe Russia could successfully, maybe not successfully, but Russian troopers are sent to the southeastern part of Ukraine. So Russian soldiers are sent. Russian soldiers are in the southeastern part of Ukrainian territory, which is the situation of that Russo-Ukrainian war. And this time, what I'd like to tell you is how to end the war. So, and why I began to talk about the end of war is because so I grew tired of that Slavic war. To start with, from the beginning, I have called that war the Slavic war, because those two countries use Slavic languages, and those two countries use Slavic or Slavonic languages. And to start with, both of those two countries had been SSRs, or Soviet Socialist Republics, and so which means that war, it's possible to say that that war, or Russo-Ukrainian war, had been held, or Russo-Ukrainian war was taking place between two SSRs, which is possible to say. So this time, so I haven't told you the conclusion of this episode. So I'm going to tell you the conclusion and the title of this episode. And the title is The Best Ending of Russo-Ukrainian War. And the conclusion is, in favor of Western European countries, a cessation or an armistice or Ukraine defeating Russia are better endings, but of those, the realistic one is the secession, I think. Anyway, so so thinking about the strengths of those two forces. So of course, the best scenario for Western European countries is, well, including the United States of America. So if Ukraine defeats Russian force, so I think that is the best scenario. That is because Ukraine can file some lawsuits, and Ukraine can demand, or Ukraine can ask Russia for reimbursement, or for money for the loss Ukraine took. So which means, so so in that war, Russia began to, so the provocation was that, or the beginning was caused by, the beginning of that war was the war was caused by Russia having invaded into Ukrainian territory, which is how that war was provoked. But actually, anyway, so according to Wikipedia, the Russo-Ukrainian War had begun in 2014, but actually, so that harsh battle began in 2022, and which was caused by the invasion of Russian force into the Ukrainian territory, and so, but actually, which is why, so Ukraine got a lot of damages caused by Russian force, or the assaults of Russian soldiers. But actually, so so which is why, if Ukraine demand, or to start with, Ukraine has a right, or has rights to demand money for compensation in favor of Ukraine. So it's possible that Ukraine demands Russia to pay money for the loss of Ukraine. So which is possible, but actually, so to do that, or to file lawsuits, and to ask Russia to ask Russia for paying or paying money for Ukraine, or asking for to enable Ukraine to ask Russia for money for compensation in favor of Ukraine. So Ukraine has to defeat Russia, or Ukraine has to win the war, or Ukraine has to beat Russian force, which is a presumable condition for taking money for Ukrainians, or for Ukraine taking money of Russia. But actually, if that is unrealistic, well, if that is impossible to accomplish, so another way is to finish the war in the form of a secession, or in the form of an armistice. So I haven't known the meaning of armistice for until this recording, and this time before beginning this recording, so I investigated how Korean War was finished, which is how I could learn the meaning of armistice, and why I investigated how Korean War was finished is, so Korean War, so that is because Korean War has not been finished, so which means Korean War has been stopped. But actually, that is a temporary secession. Also, of course, so maybe Korean War began in 1950, and that war ended maybe 1953, or around that year. So maybe 3 or 4 years passed from the beginning of Korean War, and so the situation is the situation of Korean Peninsula is stuff like that, which means, so the war has not. So I said that the Korean War, and I told you that Korean War ended, but actually, it's complicated. So the Korean War and fighting had been over for honor, but actually, so in the case of Korean War, so the war was stopped. Not finished. The war had not been finished. The Korean War had not been finished. That is because that is only a cessation between the United States or United Nations and China and Russia. Anyway, or maybe that was the fighting parties were belligerents. Anyway, so the fighting parties are the United States of America and the opponents were Russia and China, which was general structure of Korean War, and that war was finished, or that not finished. That war was ended, or that war was stopped in the form of secession, or the armies, or in the form of armistice. So which I think is another solution. Which I think is another solution, which can be applicable, or which can be applied for, or applied to the Russo-Ukrainian War. Which is what I'm saying. So so which means it's fine to cease the war between Russia and Ukraine. Which is what I'm saying. So which is why as I told you, so the conclusion is in favor of Western European countries. A cessation or an armistice or Ukraine defeating Russia are better endings, but of those, the realistic one is a cessation, I think. And so so in another words, of course, there is another scenario different from those two scenarios, or those two endings I have posed. So this, and another scenario, or the third scenario, is that Russia defeating Ukraine, or Russia beating Ukraine, and in that case, maybe Ukraine is going to become one of the republics of Russia, for example, which is one of the options. Russia would have if Russia defeats Ukraine. So maybe some government is going to be established in favor of Russian Federation, but in such a case, who has to pay money for the loss of Ukrainian territory. For the loss of the Ukrainian territory is Russian government, or Russian Federation. That is because, for example, please imagine that, for example, if there is a bridge in Berlin, for example, Berlin in Germany, for example, and that bridge, or if there is a bridge in Berlin in Germany, and if that bridge is going to be repaired, or if there is such a project to repair that bridge, so who has to pay money for the reparation, or for the repair of that bridge is, for example, German government, or Berlin government, or the local government of Berlin. Which means those two governments, or either of those two governments has to pay money for the repair of that bridge. So which means, for example, so Japanese government doesn't pay money for the repair of that bridge, which is what I'm telling you. So for example, if there's a Japanese for example, in that hypothetical situation, and if there's a Japanese who set some bombs, and those bombs destroys that bridge, the government of Berlin may be possible to file some lawsuits and get the local government of Berlin may be able to get money from Japanese government, for example. Such an option can be possible, but actually, so if such a diplomatic event, if such a diplomatic occurrence doesn't occur, so if such an event doesn't occur, who has to pay money for the repair, or for repairing that bridge in Berlin is the local government of Berlin, or the government of Germany. So which means so in the case, if Ukraine was conquered by Russia, for example, so it's Russia, and if it's Russian government who has to pay money for recovering Ukrainian territory, which is what I'd like you to know this time. So before ending this episode, I'm going to tell you the title and the conclusion of this episode. The title is The Best Ending of Russo-Ukrainian War. And the conclusion is, in favor of Western European countries, association, armistice, or Ukraine defeating Russia are better in endings, but of those, the realistic one is secession, I think. And in the case of secession, for example, so maybe some European Union may come to have to pay money for the recovery or for the loss of Ukraine, which can be possible. So which is why, and if Ukrainian beats Russia, so even in such a case, maybe European Union or other European countries have to pay money for, or maybe United States may come to have to pay money for the loss of Ukrainian territories. So which is why maybe I think the realistic solution is the secession. And in such a case, even in such a case, which means if you live in advanced European or developed European countries, so maybe your tax may be paid for the recovery or the loss of Ukraine, which I think is possible, and which is what I'd like you to know this time. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. See you.